Stanek Rally of South Africa, round 3 of the Stanek National Rally Championship, and also the second round of the FIA African Rally Championship, got underway at Samrand between Johannesburg and Pretoria with a novelty this year, a super special stage, specially for spectators and a loosener for the competitors. Pitting 2 equal cars with similarly seated crews against each other on a specially laid out stage where both complete 2 loops of equal length is a spectacular way of seeing top rallyists in action. Carrying the number 1 as reigning South African champions Jan Habak and Douglas Judd took on 6 times former champions Serge Damso and Vito Bonafide in the Works Castrol Toyota Conquest. Even though their times on this stage wouldn't count towards the official results, pride was at stake and both crews were giving it their all. At the end of their run, Habak and Judd in the Works Volkswagen Golf beat the Toyota crew by a few seconds, giving early notice of their intentions. Paolo Piazzamuso and Nick Haddon in the Sasol Ford Escort took on Etienne Lawrence and Robert Paisley in the Team Total Toyota Conquest, with a lot of interest focused on the battle between the 2 Class A8 teams. Lawrence and Paisley were running with a disadvantage, having only been able to test their car on the way to the start after extensive repairs had to be carried out following a huge accident in the previous round, the Stanek Asset Finance Rally in the Western Cape a month before. The car wasn't going as well as it should have, and the Sasol came out on top. In Class A7, the foundations for another personal battle were being laid, with the Team Total pairing of Barry Krobelaar and Mike Burrows taking on Chart van der Walt and Cindy Harding, both in Volkswagen Golfs. There were some doubts before the start of the Stanek Rally about van der Walt and Harding's participation due to a lack of funding, but a last-minute sponsorship deal made it possible for the pair to bring their GNT Golf to the event. Another fascinating battle in store, the one between Class A6 championship contenders Jürgen Fecken and Dave Lukowitz in the Dunair Toyota Conquest, and Jean-Pierre Damso and Pierre Aris in the Team Total Conquest. Fecken and Lukowitz were second in the class championship and Damso and Aris third, and enthusiasts were licking their lips in anticipation of a great battle between the youngsters, both of whom have strong rally backgrounds. After round 2, Damso was leading overall and in Class A8, Van der Walt leading A7, Dean Sanders N2, Alan Worms N1 and Craig Trott in A6.
Well, you know, the most important is to score as much points as you can, and if we can score good points again on this event, hoping of winning the event, but second or third will be good enough still.
The start of the rally proper, and a huge crowd was at hand to watch the second running of the Samrand Super Special stage, with the cars leaving in their reverse order. With the light fading in the early dusk of a Highveld autumn evening, it wasn't surprising that Samrand took some early casualties. Dirk Badenhorst and Fani Bjerkes misjudged a corner and parked their VW City Golf firmly on a bank, destroying the suspension in the process and retiring on the spot. As darkness set in, the powerful rally spotlights came into their own, although dust was causing a few problems where the cars pulled next to each other through some of the tight corners. In Group N, the performance of Hannes Grobbelaar and Dave McGregor in their Bridgestone Nissan Sentra was eagerly awaited.
I hope we're going to have a good rally. The car is well prepared, and it's a long event, and I've always done well on this event. And we'll play it off the cuff and see how it goes through. The real rally starts only tomorrow, and Friday is a long day, so we'll see.
Grobbelaar and McGregor took the stage by 1 second from Cliff Blackman and Johan Claassen in their Team Total Nissan Sentra. Lots of interest was also focused on the performance of Zimbabwean crew Hannes Kruger and Tony Rowley in their Castrol Toyota Conquest. They came up against Kali van der Merwe and Charles Rieler in the spectacular Nissan Skyline. Kruger and Rowley were competing in Class S20 for cars that don't fall into any of the South African classes, and were looking at picking up some African Championship points. There'd be no points for Van der Merwe and Rieler, though, as they wrote off their Skyline in a spectacular roll. Both were shaken, but unhurt. Day 2 of the Stanek Rally of South Africa in the Parc Fermé in Centurion was abuzz as the outcome of the Samrand Super Special stage became known. Team Total pairing Etienne Lawrence and Robert Paisley were way down in 19th position overall after picking up a 20-second penalty for lateness, on top of their other problems.
With no time testing at all, we found a lot of things that weren't right yet, so we've managed to use that 4 hours between stage 1 and 2 and severely got into the car. But there's still a big major oil leak on the sub, so we're going to have to drop that down and probably going to lose 20 to 30 minutes. Very shortly, probably after the next tar stage. We're going to have to do it, otherwise I don't think we'll get to the end, because it's really severely, I mean 4K is pumping out a litre of oil.
The route would take competitors to Mpumalanga and Swaziland, with 14 special stages in the Centurion, Witbank, Hendrina, Ermelo and Amsterdam areas before the overnight stop in the Esselwini Valley of the tiny mountain kingdom. First on the road, the Castrol Toyota Conquest pair of Serge Damso and Vito Bonafide in joint three-way lead overall after the previous day's Samran Super Special. Started by Centurion's charming mare, Rita Okamp, Habak and Judd followed Damso and Bonafide to the start control of Stage 2, a 4.5-kilometre all-tar spectator stage in the city centre. Rally crews generally dislike the short spectator stages as they virtually never get out of second gear and have to throw their cars around tight corners, which can be hard on gearboxes and brakes. But spectators love it as they can see the cars and crews in close-up action, and the sight and sound of a full-blown rally car driven by masters of their craft is something to behold. Joint leaders of the Stanek Rally of South Africa were Paulo Piazza Musso and Nick Haddon in the Sasol Ford Escort. But surprisingly, the winners of the Samran Super Special, reigning champions Dan Habak and Douglas Judd, found themselves in 5th position after picking up a 10-second time penalty for clocking in late at the final time control. This uncharacteristic lapse in concentration turned what should have been a 3-second lead into a 7-second deficit. But the KwaZulu-Natal crew were not going to let this upset them, and they went as hard as they could from the start. Piazza Musso and Haddon were also pushing the Sasol Ford Escort as hard as they could to try and pull away from the Works Toyota crew and privateers Chart van der Walt and Cindy Harding in their GNT Volkswagen Golf. The other crew in joint first position overnight. The Sasol Ford Escort pairing were lying 3rd overall and 2nd in Class A8 in the Stanek National Championship, and were looking at laying a solid foundation for their onslaught on Damso and Bonafide's leading positions in the Drivers' and Navigators' Championships. Despite setting a time of just 1 second slower than Habak and Judd the previous evening, Etienne Lawrence and Robert Paisley in the team Total Conquest had a lot of time to make up following their penalty. The car was still not handling the way they wanted. Joint overnight leaders Chart van der Walt and Cindy Harding were equally determined in their GNT Golf. This had all the makings of a high drama. Jan Smuts' house in Irene, a quaint little suburb southeast of Centurion. Stage 3 of the rally was named after Cornwall Hill, with the South African Air Force's Ad Astra Eagle soaring into the sky. Piazza Musso and Haddon were still pushing their Sasol Ford Escort RS2000, having finished the previous stage right up there with Damso and Habak. Pretoria-based crew Barry Probelar and Mike Burrows were trailing Class A7 leaders Van der Walt and Harding by 8 seconds after the first 2 stages and took a second back on Stage 3. Zimbabweans Kruger and Rowley in the 4-wheel drive Castrol Toyota Conquest struggled in the tight spectator stage in Centurion, dropping 18 seconds down the field after lying 2nd overall overnight. The battle for Class A6 honours was hotting up as Fecken and Lukowitz in the Dunair Conquest traded victories in Stages 1 and 2 with Team Totals Damso and Aris. After Stage 3, Fecken was leading by a second. Reigning African champions Santvan Singh from Zambia and Surinder Tati from Kenya were taking it easy in their Group N Subaru, knowing full well that their car wasn't designed for short sprint stage events, but rather for longer marathons. Hannes Hrobler and Dave McGregor in their Bridgestone Nissan Sentra had established an early lead in Class N3 for standard 2-litre cars by taking all 3 stages in their class. Dicky Moreira and Danny Duval in their Toyota Corolla seemed the only likely challengers, trailing the Nissan crew by 8 seconds before Stage 3. Here they dropped another 10 seconds. Early Class N3 challengers Cliff Blackman and Johan Klaassen in the Team Total Nissan Sentra had dropped 12 seconds to Hrobler and McGregor in Stage 2 and lost another 11 in Stage 3. There was a lot of interest in how the Group N cars would cope with the strenuous demands placed on them in South Africa's premier event. No problems so far, though, for the championship leaders Sanders and Hooper. Plenty of problems, unfortunately, for Piazza Musso and Haddon, though, who brought their Sasol Ford Escort to the service points with no sound coming from the engine. Would this be the end of their effort?
A bit of panic stations for the Sasol Ford team. We had a fan belt jump off a couple of k's from the end of the stage, and we've had a fairly long open section, and as a result of that, the water pump doesn't turn and the car's overheated, so we burst a water pipe in the process as well.
In the Stanek South African Rally Championship, teams are allowed only half an hour lateness for each leg of the event, which is in accordance with standards laid down by the FIA. With the complicated layout of the engine bay and plumbing, the hard-working Sasol Ford service crew found that they'd need an hour to repair the damage, which would see them time-barred. Their rally was run. Bronkhorstspruit, halfway between Pretoria and Witbank, and the die-hard rally fans gathered for the next spectator stage at Kultura Park. Just more than 6 kilometres long, the unfolding drama of the Stanek Rally of South Africa would continue there as the teams continued their quest for glory. After 4 competitive stages, Castrol Toyota crew Serge Damso and Vito Bonafide had a tenuous 2-second lead over Volkswagen's Jan Havik and Douglas Judd. And with the demise of the Sasol Ford, the battle would be fought between these two pairs. The KwaZulu-Natal team had gradually clawed their way back up the leaderboard after their overnight penalty, taking 4 seconds off Damso and Bonafide in both stage 3 and 4. Their car was going well, and they could smell the chance of taking the lead. Lawrence and Paisley were still struggling with their oil leak problem, but the team total crew was setting very competitive times in their conquest. Just down the N4 to Witbank next, before the route continued to the southeast on the way to the Swaziland border. The Eastern Escarpment is favourite rally country, with many good stages to be found in the area. Stage 6 at Volvokrans, and Chad van der Walt and Sidney Harding had moved into 3rd position overall and were still leading Class A7 in their GNT VW Golf. They were some 24 seconds behind Havik and Judd, who were now jointly in the lead with Damso and Bonafide. 2nd and A7 were Grobelaar and Burrows in the team total Golf, some 16 seconds behind van der Walt and Harding, but in 5th overall behind Lawrence and Paisley. Zimbabweans Hannes Kruger and Tony Rowley were gradually dropping back in their 4-wheel drive Castrol Toyota Conquest in another car that's primarily designed for the longer marathon events which form part of the African Championship. In Class A6, Jürgen Fecken and Dave Lukowitz in the Dunair Conquest had dropped to 2nd behind JP Damso and Pierre Aris, but a determined effort in the Volvokrans leg saw them winning the stage in their class. Damso and Aris in the team total conquest carried a lead of 8 seconds into this stage, but a spin saw them losing 23 seconds to Fecken and Lukowitz. Former rally and off-road champion Hannes Grobelaar and Dave McGregor in the Bridgestone Nissan Sentra were beginning to dominate the Group N battle, pulling away from their nearest Class N3 rivals, Cliff Blackman and Johan Claassen. In Class N2, Diffie Moreira and Danny Duval in the Goodwood Auto Electrical Toyota Corolla were leading Dean Sanders and Graham Hooper by a mere 11 seconds. Good communication between driver and navigator is vital, but it sometimes falls by the wayside in the heat of the moment. 2nd behind Grobelaar and McGregor at this stage, Blackman and Claassen in the team total Nissan Sentra dropped another 12 seconds, putting them 50 seconds down. The service area after Volvokrans, and despite appearances to the contrary, Jan Havik did not have a trouble-free run, even though he completed the stage only 1 second slower than Damso.
It looks like we've got an intermittent electrical problem, and then so it switched off completely and the car stopped, and then we had to restart the thing, and it looks like 20 seconds went out the window there, but the car otherwise going very well, so if that problem goes away now, then it'll be a good rally. We'll have a good dice for Serge.
With virtually nothing to choose between the front runners in Class A6, as well as in the battle for 4th overall, Jean-Pierre Damso was not overly concerned at being behind Jürgen Fecken.
So far it's been going well. Me and Fecken and Barry are quite close, the 3 of us. But it's a long way from the end. There's another 3 days left. So we're just going to take it a bit easier now and just try and get to the end on Saturday afternoon.
Ermelo, a dusty town in the south of Mpumalanga, which traditionally hosts part of the Rally of South Africa. The event has often started here in the past, before organisers decided to move the start to the Gauteng area in a successful attempt to attract more spectators. Still in their original starting position, Damso and Bonafide had slipped to 2nd overall behind Havik and Judd when they started stage 8 after losing 12 seconds to the Volkswagen crew in the previous stage at Hendrina. Having fixed their electrical problem, the reigning champions were determined to start building a lead over the Castrol Toyota crew. After taking an 11-second lead after the previous stage, Havik and Judd took another 2 in 8. Up in 3rd overall now, having overtaken Van der Walt and Harding, Etienne Lawrence and Robert Paisley were pushing their team total Toyota Conquest hard, despite various worrying mechanical problems. A nice full crowd packed the grandstand at the Ermelo Showgrounds, watching Chad van der Walt and Cindy Harding in the GNT VW Golf, 5th overall, and now only 3 seconds ahead of Grobelaar and Burrows. They'd lost 10 seconds in all in 2 stages, struggling with the pace notes. Hannes Kruger and Tony Rowley from Zimbabwe in the ex-Damso 4x4 Castrol Toyota Conquest, who were not eligible for South African Championship points because their car did not conform to local regulations, were making a bit of a comeback, moving into 4th overall. The Dunair Toyota Conquest of Jürgen Fecken and Dave Lukowitz had a 33-second advantage over Damso and Aris going into stage 8. Damso and Aris, second in Class A6 and 8th overall, lost some 18 seconds to Fekkin and Lukovic because of a spin in Stage 7 and had to make amends. Stage 9, a 14-kilometre stage in the Panbult area of southern Mpumalanga, saw African champions Santvan Singh and Surinder Tati in their Group N Subaru still on song. The affable pair love coming to South Africa. In a remarkable performance, the standard Bridgestone Nissan Sentra of Hannes Grobler and Dave McGregor had moved up into the top 10 with a comfortable margin in Class N3. Diffie Moreira and Danny Duval were not so happy in their Goodwood Auto electrical Toyota Corolla, running in Class N2, complaining of a down-on-power engine. They also picked up a 10-second penalty for clocking in late after Stage 8. Things are never quiet inside a rally car.
900, caution medium right, caution medium right.
Second in Class N3 at this stage, behind Grobler and McGregor, Team Total pair Cliff Blackman and Johan Clausen were also doing exceptionally well. Class N2 championship leaders Dean Sanders and Graham Hooper were pushing hard to catch Moreira and Duval, but intercom problems made communication difficult. Some welcome service time for running repairs after Stage 9, and while Group N front-runner Hannes Grobler phoned home, we asked his navigator, Dave McGregor, how things were going for them.
I think our strategy was to, on the smoother stages before we crossed the border, to build up a little bit of a buffer so that we could fish and sort of wheel the guys in and out. And we've got about a minute buffer on the Group N class and about 2 minutes in our specific category, so we're quite comfortable at this stage. Strategy is working, but there's still 2 long, hard days to go, and a night.
Stage 11, a short 5-kilometre stage at Ravumia near Amsterdam, and Damso and Bonafide were worried. They'd broken a tie rod near the end of the previous stage and lost a further 9 seconds to Havoc and Judd. No such problems for the Volkswagen crew, even though Damso and Bonafide took a second off them in Stage 11. Lawrence and Paisley were struggling with a number of mechanical problems, and although their stage times were good, they'd taken a lot of lateness, which would drop them in the order. Chad van der Walt and Sidney Harding had fallen to second in A7, 3 seconds behind Grobler and Burrows after the previous stage, but the Team Total crew couldn't capitalise on this in Stage 11, suffering terminal suspension problems and retiring from the event. This would do their championship hopes no good at all. After the 12th stage, the service crews had another chance to tend to the niggling problems that beset any rally car as they came to the end of the second leg of the Stanek. We caught up with a concerned Serge Damso, now 49 seconds behind the leaders.
We've got some problem with the dampers again, so we'll have to just change some dampers and see if we can get it right.
Same as in Natal?
More or less the same way in Natal is.
But in the Volkswagen camp, no such worries, as the kit car, originally designed for the Safari Rally in Kenya, had been behaving impeccably. Driver Jan Habik was relaxed in the knowledge that he'd built up a handy lead. After crossing the border into Swaziland, the competitors tackled the first stage in the famous Usutu forests. The Castrol Toyota team's woes weren't over, though, with Damso and Bonafide dropping a further 6 seconds over the 9-kilometre stage to Havoc and Judd. Night rallying isn't for mere mortals. The Works Volkswagen crew continued to pull away as the night wore on. Chad van der Walt and Cindy Harding had found their feet and were going along nicely in their Class A7 GNT Volkswagen Golf after the demise of Grobler and Burrows. But they had one problem. The Class A6 leaders were breathing down their necks. Jürgen Fekkin and Dave Lukovic in the Dunair Toyota Conquest had opened up a substantial lead in A6 and were getting closer and closer to the Volkswagen. In the Group N battle, Hannes Grobler and Dave McGregor had lost some time on Diffie Moreira and Danny Duval after they had to make do with an intermittent problem with their spots, but they still held a substantial lead as the day drew to a close. At the overnight halt in the Ezelwini Valley after 15 stages, Jürgen Fekkin and Dave Lukovic were in a remarkable third overall in the Dunair Toyota Conquest after a fast and consistent drive.
Yeah, it's a long way to go. We just want to stay there, not lose any time. So we're not going to pull out any aerobics. Just stay on the road.
The standings at the end of day 2 made for some interesting reading. Havoc and Judd had made more than a minute over Damso and Bonafide, while only 10 seconds separated the next 3 teams. Fekkin and Lukovic had more than 2 minutes over Damso and Aris in A6. Van der Walt and Harding were leading A7, and Grobler and McGregor Group N in 7th overall. Swazi Sun in the heart of the picturesque Ezulwini Valley, which for more than 20 years has played host to the Stanek Rally of South Africa. Its convention centre and leisure facilities acts as a magnet for foreign visitors throughout the year, and it's ideally situated as the venue for rally headquarters. Day 2 dawned bright and sunny, and the crews enjoyed a pleasant chat before the serious work of tackling the 13 stages that lay ahead.
Well, we've got 1 minute 16 seconds on the second competitor, so you know, our plan was really to get to Swaziland with a minute lead, and 1 minute 16 is close enough to the plan for us. And for the rest of the day, I think we'll keep pushing quite hard, and we'll just see what the tactics will be from the Toyota team.
Leg 4 and 5 would take the competitors from Malkerns in the east to Bunya in the west and Mklambanyatsi in the north, before returning to rally headquarters for the overnight halt. Stage 16, the first of the day, and Jan Habek and Douglas Judd in the Works Volkswagen Golf wanted to consolidate their lead from as early as possible. The Stanek is notorious for mechanical failures right to the end of the event, and enough time to do proper repairs can make the difference. At the same time, Serge Damso and Vito Bonafide in the Works Castrol Toyota Conquest wanted to exert maximum pressure on the leading crew to try to catch up. The Class A6 Dunner Toyota Conquest crew of Jürgen Fecken and Dave Lukowitz had many people talking the previous night.
We're lying third overall. The car is handling very well. We've got 2 guys pushing in our necks. I think between us and the 5th guy is only 10 seconds. So we have to push hard but stay on the road.
Just 6 seconds behind, but leading Class A7, the GNT golf crew of Chart van der Walt and Cindy Harding had everything to gain by trying to catch Fecken and Lukowitz, and they were looking good. Fifth overnight, the Zimbabweans Hannes Kruger and Tony Rowley in the 4-wheel drive Castrol Toyota Conquest didn't start their day very well by dropping almost a minute from the leaders. The top 4 Group N competitors were all in the top 10 overnight, led by Hannes Grobler and Dave McGregor in 7th.
Yeah, we're very happy with our position, but the meat of the rally is only today, and it's still long. It's basically a whole national today, and tomorrow it's still also over 100 kilos. So we'll see how it goes today, and we'll just try and stay ahead of the Group Ns.
81 seconds behind, and also second in Class N3, were Cliff Blackman and Johan Klaassen in the Team Total Nissan Sentra, with Class N2 leaders in 9th overall position, Dippy Moreira and Danny Duval in the Goodwood Auto Electrical Toyota Corolla. 10th overall and second in Class N2, Team Total's Dean Sanders and Graham Hooper would unfortunately not see the end of Stage 17 after a broken side shaft put an end to their rally. Die-hard rally spectators love coming on the Stanek, and Santvan Singh and Surinder Tati in their Group N Subaru, lying 12th overall, and Artie Reinecker and Robin Houghton in the Castrol Toyota Land Cruiser in 14th made it worth their while. Privateer Nico Higgs and veteran rally navigator Menno Havalar in their Class A6 Toyota Conquest were 4th in class and 15th overall, chasing class championship leaders Craig Trott and Brian Duncan. At the service halt after Stage 18, Cliff Blackman was optimistic.
Yeah, today is we made it through the night stages. Today is a day I think where we have to shuffle for position. Group N at the moment very close, so we can't give an inch. So one wrong turn and then you battle like mad to get back. So the idea is just to stay on the road and see if we can't make a bit of a gap between the N2s, because they're very hard to get away from at the moment.
Making a welcome return to rallying, Big Skalkberger, along with Thilo van Vesterhagen, had brought his privately entered Toyota Conquest to 16th overall and 3rd in Class N2.
Well, we're starting off reasonably early this morning, and the roads are very rough, and we're just hanging in there just to get to the end. It's still a long day ahead, and then it's still tomorrow as well.
Car holding up a road.
The car's going very, very well.
After taking 37 seconds off Serge Damso in the first 3 stages, Habek pulled out all the stops in the longest stage of the day of more than 30 kilometers. In the end, the gap between the 2 works teams widened by another minute and 13 seconds. Damso and Bonafide were also going all out, but niggling problems were hampering their progress. Fecken and Lukowitz in the Dunair Toyota Conquest had since slipped to 21 seconds behind Van der Vault and Harding, and this little indiscretion cost them another full minute. With Zimbabweans Hannes Kruger and Tony Rowley dropping out after stage 17, this meant that the Pretoria crew were back in 4th position. Van der Vault and Harding were setting some very quick stage times during the morning, capitalising on the fact that they could take time off the opposition on the longer stages, while JP Damso and Pierre Aris in the Team Total Conquest were going along steadily, content to rather finish the event than to challenge for the A6 lead. Class N1 Championship leaders Alan Worms and Ashley Hedeker, who started 27th in the morning, were having a tough time in their lesson engineering Opel Corsa, with just about everything that could going wrong.
It's been really rough. We started off at Samran bad. We shared all our bolts off for the left rear wheel. Managed to finish the stage, don't know how. And from there it's just gone from bad to really worse. We now broke our CVs last night, put in a new one before the Parc Fermé. It's still leaking. We don't know where it's leaking from, but it's definitely leaking from somewhere. We seized our left shock, so it's just going from bad to worse. All the N1s are out now, so we're just really just trying to maintain and stay in the race and get as many points as we can to maintain our championship aspirations and see what happens from there.
Wherever the rally cars were parked, an interested crowd tried to get as close to the action as possible.
Peter, with pace notes it makes our lives a lot easier and a lot safer. We can go a lot quicker, especially over the blind rises. We know exactly what happens on the other side. But on this event in particular, we're pleased to have been over the route because it's very rough. So we've now marked the rough stuff, we've marked the fast stuff, so we can give it all we got when we can go quickly. And of course we have to look after the car when it gets rough.
One of the traditional features of the Stanek is the water splash at the Ezulwini Sun. And Krobler and McGregor made sure that our cameraman would not forget this, yes, to the delight of the crowd. Cliff Blackman and Johan Clausen decided on a more careful approach, probably concerned that water could get into the engine's distributor. Dippy Moreira and Danny DeVol went through a little faster. But the splash of the day came from Arpi Reiniger and Robin Houghton, whose Castrol Land Cruiser didn't even feel a thing. The Ezulwini splash is a favourite with crowds and crews alike, and Scott Berger wanted to entertain. The fun and games at the splash brought to a close leg 4 of the Stanek Rally of South Africa, which meant that crews could use their built-up service time to make the necessary repairs before going into the Parc Fermé. Hannes Kruger explained what happened to them.
Yes, right. We're going to drop the Pinot.
Going well in the second stage, 2 k's in, came around the corner. There's a rock, most probably about 8-9 inches high in the road. Hit that, which split the rim in half, and that took the car into the bank, and we nearly rolled, but anyway we kept it on its wheels, and yeah, but the bank did all the damage.
On to leg 5 after a welcome lunch break, and the next 7 stages would take competitors to the west of Bunya and northwards towards Mhlambanyatsi before ending the day at Ezulwini again. Habak and Judd in the Works Volkswagen Golf had built up a commanding lead of some 4 minutes over Damso and Bonafide. The narrow forest stages called for the utmost concentration, and even with such a huge lead, they couldn't afford to relax for a minute. Damso and Bonafide were battling with some niggling suspension problems in their Castrol Toyota Conquest and dropped another 12 seconds to the leaders in the first 2 stages after lunch. Fecken and Lukowitz were down to 4th in the Dunair Toyota Conquest behind Chad van der Vault and Cindy Harding in the GNT Volkswagen Golf, who were still leading Class A7. Unbeknown to many of the front-runners, though, another factor was coming into play. And while Van der Vault and Harding were looking good for a 3rd overall, Etienne Lawrence had an overnight time penalty reversed, which put him right amongst the leaders on the overall standings. JP JP Damso and Pierre Aris in the team Total Conquest were still running steadily, but kept on dropping back in relation to Fecken and Lukowitz in A6 and were falling into the clutches of the Group N cars. A change in the Group N order saw Team Total Nissan Sentra crew, Cliff Blackman and Johan Klaassen in front, ahead of earlier leaders Krobler and McGregor, who lost 3 minutes because of a puncture. Initially starting 11th overall, but rapidly making up positions were Team Total Class A8 Toyota Conquest crew, Etienne Lawrence and Robert Paisley, who leapfrogged to 5th behind Fecken and Lukowitz after getting back their penalties. Punctures were starting to become the scourge of mainly the Group N competitors, and new leaders Blackman and Klaassen were not spared the ordeal either.
Gremlin finally hit us, and I think we've all had punches, and suddenly it was our turn, and had to stop and change it. Luckily we managed to finish the stage though first, so I think probably on the stage time we've lost about a minute, Johannes. So it looks like he's really right behind us now, so hope we don't have any more problems.
Apart from some suspension and electrical problems and a broken side shaft during the afternoon, which were all seen to without losing too much time, the GNT Technologies crew of Chart van der Walt and Cindy Harding were in a relatively safe 3rd position behind Damso and Bonafide and Habak and Judd. 4th still were Fecken and Lukowitz, ahead of Lawrence and Paisley, Blackman and Klaassen, Damso and Aris, Krobler and McGregor, and Morer and De Waal. Night fell over the Mountain Kingdom, and for most crews, it would be a question of surviving until the overnight halt. Stage 27 was a repeat of the long 30-kilometre stage of the morning, and Habak took almost 3.5 minutes off Damso. Still in 4th position, but closing in on Van der Walt and Harding, was the Danair Conquest of Jürgen Fecken and Dave Lukowitz. The GNT Golf had been suffering from an intermittent misfire, and the Cape Town crew had been giving away more than 30 seconds in the last 2 stages to their pursuers. Some more problems with punctures saw Krobler and McGregor drop down to 3rd in Group N, behind Blackman and Klaassen and Morer and De Waal. Team Total Nissan Sentra pair, Blackman and Klaassen, were involved in an exciting battle with Damso and Aris and the Land Cruiser of Reinecker and Houghton just ahead of them. The reigning South African off-road champions were up to an incredible 7th overall, Reinecker and Houghton finding that the big Castrol Toyota Land Cruiser was ideally suited for the conditions.
The rough stuff definitely suits us. Not so much, I think, in the speed over the rough, but the fact that it can handle it, it's not going to fall apart. I see a lot of the competitors having suspension problems, things breaking. This thing hopefully can do it for a long time. You know, that's what we race on day in and day out. So we're quite looking forward to it. Fortunately, we seem to be tuning a lot of tyres, so we'll see what we do tomorrow. Long way to go still.
Former National Rally and off-road champion Hannes Krobler's words of the morning proved prophetic as the long day took its toll on the Bridgestone Nissan Sentra. The team dropped down to 10th and 3rd in Group N. At the end of day 2, Habak and Judd had extended their lead over Damso and Bonafide to more than 8 minutes. Lawrence and Paisley were 3rd, while Fecken and Lukowitz moved past Van der Walt and Harding. A visit to the Ezulwini Valley and the Royal Swazi Sun would be incomplete without taking in the delights of its casino, where the excitement of a winning streak is matched only by the luxury of a body massage, the international cuisine, and the fine hospitality on offer. It was cloudy when the crews got ready to get into their cars for the start of the final day. The possibility that rain could turn the stages into mud wasn't a thought relished by many. Another 8 stages made up leg 6 of the Stanek Rally of South Africa, most of which would be run in the Bunya Hill and Nurston border area of Swaziland before the finale back at rally headquarters. Habak and Judd started the final day very much the same way they finished the previous day.
I think we've placed ourselves well. You know, the car's been very reliable, behaving itself. At this stage, I think our biggest aim is to keep our concentration and find a nice speed just to keep the concentration level at 100%. And that's our race today.
Damso and Bonafide were struggling with no power steering and a suspension that was threatening to collapse, while Lawrence and Paisley had some gear selection problems, dropping 20 seconds to the leaders in this stage. Apart from this, the Team Total crew seemed to have found their feet and were not suffering from any after effects after that crash a month before. Dunair Toyota's Jürgen Fecken and Dave Lukowitz were some 3 minutes behind Lawrence and Paisley at the restart, but took 14 seconds on this stage. Down in fifth after having to take plenty of lateness at the end of the previous day because of mechanical problems, Van der Walt and Harding were trying to catch up. Team Total Toyota Conquest crew JP Damso and Pierre Aris were still holding station in 6th place overall and 2nd in Class A6, but they knew that they couldn't relax too much as the Castrol Toyota Land Cruiser of Reinecker and Houghton was just more than a minute behind. The reigning production vehicle off-road champions were surprising friend and foe as they held their own in a vehicle that showed it could handle both the rough stuff and the high speeds. But closing in on the off-roaders were Group N leaders Cliff Blackman and Johan Claassen in the Team Total Nissan Sentra, who'd been benefiting from the tyre misfortunes of Probler and McGregor. Leading Class N2 runners, Diffie Moreira and Donny Duval in the Goodwood Auto-Electrical Toyota Corolla were also still ahead of the early Group N leaders. This was turning out to be the battle to watch as Probler and McGregor in the Bridgestone Nissan Sentra set off in an effort to get back into the lead, at least of the Group N competitors. But their tyre woes were not over, as yet another puncture slowed them down, costing them more time and putting their 10th position at risk from the reigning African champions Santvan Singh and Surinder Tati, who were continuing in their steady way, not putting themselves or their Group N Subaru at risk and waiting for others to make the mistakes. But further up the field, drama struck when Van der Walt and Harding lost a lot of time.
We had a misfire which turned out to be a fuel starvation problem. We fixed the fuel injectors, took lateness doing that. We fell back to within a minute and a half of Fecken, and then we had a rear axle problem, so we took more lateness. And we ended up going into the holding area another 3 minutes late, so we were 28 minutes down on Fecken. We dropped back to 5th place.
Probler and McGregor were forced to complete the stage with a flat tyre, which caused damage to the front suspension and the steering rack. Hurried repairs were necessary, which cost them even more time, but the veterans of the rally world still remained positive.
Well, it's still tight, you know, the saying goes, life's a journey, enjoy the ride. Well, I tell you, we're enjoying the ride. We've still got a bit to go. There's about a regional distance, and we're still competitive. I think we're going to just go flat out now and see if we can get to the finish wrap and perhaps really in the class. We'll be happy to finish, I can tell you.
Past the Bunya wood mills, and with 5 stages still to go, anything was indeed still possible. Havoc and Judd continued to extend their lead, something quite unusual on the Stanek Rally over the years, with finishing margins often measured in seconds rather than minutes. Damso and Bonafide soldiered on, still with steering and suspension problems in their Castrol Toyota Conquest, wondering whether they'd be able to keep Lawrence and Paisley at bay. In this stage, they lost 23 seconds to Havoc and 26 seconds to the Team Total pair. After all the hassles that they'd had to endure during the first half of the Stanek, Lawrence and Paisley felt they'd had a chance of catching the Castrol crew and went as hard as they could, winning the stage in the process. The pair were unaware of the problems encountered by Van der Walt and Harding, and were also making sure that their 3rd position wasn't in danger from the Volkswagen crew. Dunair crew Jürgen Fecken and Dave Lukowitz were now back up into 4th position overall and in a safe lead in Class A6. And if they could remain where they were to the end, it would ensure them the lead in the class championship. Van der Walt and Harding in the GNT Volkswagen Golf had decided that with all the problems they had to contend with, it was safer to ensure the Class A7 win. The rain clouds still gathering, but Havoc had other things to think about.
16 kilometers to go and it's all over.
Yeah, but I'm struggling to keep my concentration. It's very hard work, and we made quite a few mistakes this morning, which I don't like, but the concentration is the problem at this stage.
With just 3 stages to go, the remaining teams were intent on just finishing, a great feat on its own. Skalkberger and Thilo van Vesterhagen was one of them. Team Total's Craig Trott and Brian Duncan were holding down a steady 3rd place in A6. While Rocky Reinecker and Richard Herholtz were down in 15th position, but 2nd in Class A7. The only other foreign crew remaining in the Stanek were James White from Zimbabwe and Philip Archenal from the UK, who were in 14th place in their Toyota Conquest. Dolf Kutsia and Johan Barnard were lying 16th overall and 4th in Class A6 in their Toyota Conquest. Another Class A7 car was the Golf of Atti Klutter and Manny Stradum, who were 3rd in class and 17th overall. The ever-consistent Spotty Woodhead had already completed more than 20 Stanek rallies, and with Mario Swart it seemed like he had another one in the bag. Johan Fourie and Andrew Masters in their Nissan Sentra Coupe were in 19th position, while Bertie Kutzer and Skalk van Heerden in their Ford Laser held on to 20th position. 21st were Visser Duplessis and Ben Kruger, with Gert van Rensburg and Theuns Verster bringing up the rear. The traditional final stage of the Stanek Rally of South Africa around the sports fields of the Ezulwini Sun, where many a grand finale has been played out before. This year was different. Where the final order was decided on this stage last year, this year saw a dominating performance of mammoth proportions, with Havoc and Judd beating everyone else by more than 10 minutes in their Volkswagen Golf. Another fantastic drive came from Fecken and Lukowitz, who brought their Dunair Toyota home in 4th overall, winning Class A6 convincingly. The ever-consistent Thunderbolt-Harding combination once again won Class A7 in their GNT Golf, finishing 5th overall. And in another great performance, Reinecker and Houghton finished 7th overall in their Castrol Toyota Land Cruiser. Pulling out all the stops to eventually win Group N in their Bridgestone Nissan Sentra, Krobler and McGregor finished 8th overall. Diffie Moreira and Dani Duval brought their Goodwood Auto-Electrical Toyota Corolla home in 10th position, winning Class N2. Last year's Group N winners, Satvan Singh and Surinder Tati, drove consistently to finish 11th in their Subaru. Havoc and Judd's victory moved them up to 2nd position in the championship, with Damso and Bonafide retaining their lead. Fecken and Lukowitz moved to the top of the Class A6 championship, while Krobler and McGregor jumped to 6th overall, still leading Group N. Of the original 42 starters, 22 finished the event, with Duplessis and Kruger and Van Rensburg and Verster bringing up the rear, just outside the top 20. It was a delighted Jan Havoc and Douglas Judd who mounted the winning ram for the first time in their careers, with the triumphant Volkswagen Motorsport crew in enthusiastic attendance and the traditional brass band of the Ezulwini Sun providing the musical accompaniment.
Yeah, tough and hard, but the last day was very easy, and the team worked well, the car was well prepared, and we're very happy with the result.
Then came the celebrations, and the Volkswagen team didn't need a second invitation to shower the crew with the bubblies. The sweet taste of victory, shared by the appreciative crowd, is something to be savoured. Just as happy about their Group N victory were Hannes Krobler and Dave McGregor, and the fact that they could finish in the top 10 in such a grueling event is a good sign that the Group N field can only grow stronger. There was more champagne for Satvan Singh and Surinder Tati as winners of the 2nd round of the FIA African Continent Rally Championship, the reigning champions staking a strong claim to retain their title. With 6 entries in the final top 10, Toyota took the manufacturer's victory and extended their lead in the championship over Volkswagen, with Nissan still in 3rd and Opel and Ford completing the top 5.